Okay, so I've got these little spots here that I want to tape off so that as I add my paint, I'm not going to create any chance of going over the edge. Now I don't need to tape off any of these corners here because I'm not going to be putting paint up near here. And you want to make sure, you know, that you do this. You know yourself best, so if you're really messy, as I can tend to be sometimes, you can tape this off. Now if you trust yourself enough to not need to tape anything off, don't worry about it. If you don't have tape, just take your time and be cautious as you do so, so that you don't get any paint around the outside edges. If it doesn't look like you used a stencil, then maybe you didn't use a stencil. Let's see. You just hand painted it all. Alright, that looks good to me there. Now, I'm kind of worried about getting some of the paint in through these sections here and maybe in through here. So I'm going to go ahead and tape some of that stuff off too. And you can just kind of sculpt little spots around those areas with little bits of tape. You don't need to lay down, you know, like a whole bunch, just enough to cover up where you don't want the paint to go. So I am using that blue and that white in through here. And what I can do is set that someplace so it's easier for you to get to. I'm going to do color mixing here. So I'm going to have two here so I can actually color dab in through here instead of trying to grab these two colors, mix them together, dab from there into here. So I'm going to set this up a little bit, and because I want the darkest color to be up here and the lightest color to be down here, I'm actually going to start with my lightest color down here and then work up to that darker blue up through there. And you can kind of gauge how that's going to look by starting off with a little bit of white down in here on the S is and the heart, and then start adding a little bit of blue in through there. You're going to always come back in with more white or more blue depending on how much I want to go in through there and do that. So I'm going to take a little bit of white in through here. And so depending on the paint that you use, you can see I've got this little peak of paint in through there. You can dab it a little on the edge of what you're working on. If you've got space over here on your design, you can knock some of that down, because you definitely don't want to go in with a bunch of paint on here. You're not going to have a good look at the end. And I'm especially starting here on the is, and granted it is white on white that I'm doing right here, but if you've got another paint, you won't want to do that. So I am just quickly tapping in some of that white up in through here. Now this is where I can kind of be loose about some of this around the sides because it's white on white. But when I go in and I grab some of this blue, and again I want to kind of tap that off a little bit on my palette. This is kind of runny, so I don't want to dribble to have happen while I'm over here. And if you need to, you know, switch hands. So I'm going to take in, I finished out that white right about here, right? So I'm going to take that blue and I'm going to come in right around there, and I'm going to tap that in right over the top of it. And I'm going to slowly work that down into that white, and as that mixes with it, it becomes that lighter blue. And so this is how you can get like that ombre color, or that gradation. And I can even come back in and add more white down in through here, change that up. And one thing you do want to be cautious of is getting enough gradation or color change in everything so that you can see that it's smooth transition in through there. Now if I was to go in, if I'm blending say a red into a yellow to make an orange on this, I wouldn't want to go in with the yellow, put that in, and then come all the way up at the top and start down into my yellow, because then the yellow would be dry and it wouldn't mix. So that's why you want to work with the two sponges at the same time so that you can mix those colors. And you can do multiple mixes. If I wanted to say go from a blue up into a purple in through here and the red up at the top with that heart, I very easily could. And now that I think about it, I might. Just to show you a little bit more on what you can do with some color blending. Now my worry on this is that if I make this area down here too light, you won't be able to see it. I won't have enough contrast to go in through there. So I'm going to kind of tap around through there, knock some of that white out, but I want to bring some of that up into the top here. Add a little bit more blue, and then start bringing that back into that white. We got a little bit more white to play with. And take a sneak peek a little bit down in here later and see if I've got enough contrast to make that work. Now I'm working back and forth as I tap this in, and just an up and down stamping motion is all you need to lay this in. If you did any brushing, it'll push that paint up underneath your stencil there, and it'll cause it to bleed and not look all that great. So as I get into my transition here of is where the, so I was going to go all the way dark, but I got to thinking about going into kind of a purple up through here, so I'm going to go ahead and lay in this blue. And if you were to get a kit from here at the studio and you've got say just the basic colors, the primaries, and you wanted to do a secondary color, this is, I'll show you how you can get that purple out of blue and red. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, you just covered it all up with blue. Well, that way, I'm going to go ahead and just use the same one here. I'm working with some blue, and a little bit of white may not hurt. Now I've got a little bit of red to start. Tap that out on the side here. Switch over here, and I can come in with some of that red and white. And as I mix those in, it'll make purple-ish color. So I've got that red, and come back in, more of that blue, and maybe grab a little bit more blue, and tap that back in over the middle here. That's my middle point where the transition is between the light blue and the dark blue, and then on up into the purple. And I'm just tapping that in. Now I've got this spot right here. You notice that where as I tap that color in, it's not picking up the color. Now there is that knot that's right there, and it could be the natural pitch that's in the wood or the resin, you know, that is keeping it from wanting to stick. Could also be from my fingers. Maybe my thumb rushed across there and a little bit of oil got on there. You can go back over that with some light stamping to give it just a very light coat, and then just let it set and dry. Now the one thing you do not want to do with this as you paint this in is to add so much paint that you can't really see your design through paint that you're laying down in through there. So I think I'm going almost a little too reddish in through there. I mean, I guess kind of a red, white, and a blue is alright. Maybe that's what this will develop into. In fact, I might even encourage that a little bit. Pop some of that there. Coming right up at the top. So I've been working this fairly quickly so that paint stays wet. Now if you take too long in trying to stamp it in through there at times, it gets tacky and it wants to come up more than when you want to put it down. So watch for that. You can let it dry and come back in with a second coat, especially if you're just doing one color. You want to put on one coat, thin coat, let that set, and then come back in and paint back over the top of it with the second one. Not too often do you need a third coat of a color, but you know, I'll let that be up to you. And if you do have a lot of paint, sometimes you can get some issues when you pull your stencil up. So I don't know if I need to do, I'm going to add a little bit more blue down here. So the fun part is peeling this up and seeing what it all looks like in the end. So I'm going to set these guys off to the side there and let that sit. We'll pull up our little tapes around here and we'll paint in through there, maybe tape off some of these other sections there. So we'll come back at this here in just a moment. So here's another cheers to you. So next I'm going to very gently peel away these pieces of tape that I had. Now if you want, you can save them, you can set them off to the side. You've got this graded backing paper here, you could put it on there. So I'm going to be cautious not to pull up any of my pieces again here, as well as if I have any wet paint, then I'm not going to touch it down and set it someplace that I don't want it. So do watch for that, and you can even use it. So if I come in and I'm going to do my red of my hearts next, you can even use that to tape off the next section there, which I think I'm going to do for this one here, like that. Now I'm going to come in and dab with those. So I've got my red here. I'm going to take and give a little off the side, and then start in and just tap that through. Now again, you want quick, thin coat, and just spread that around as best you can. I guess in this area I don't have to worry about the purple, but down here I don't quite think about that. So we'll just be a little extra cautious, especially right there. It's really just that first coat gives that wood something to start soaking in there. Once it dries a little bit, you can go on with that second one, and it'll go on quite a bit darker, of more of a pure hue color. So I'm going to let this dry real quick. My paint doesn't take too long. I'm going to see some shiny spots where it is wet, but since I started with this heart here, should be able to go in and make that now a darker red. And then over on this one here, slightly darker. And this one, I like it being, I make it kind of a pink. Add a little white right into it. All right. So next I'm going to tear off and I'm going to do my little pieces of vine. And again, you know, I can keep everything to the side. Now, if I'm not worried about where paint may be dry, I can, or wet, you know, I can lay this down to cover that up. Be really careful with this one here. Let that dry a little bit first. Watch your fingers for, you know, picking up anything. You don't want to grab any paint and put your finger down someplace where you don't want it. You know, unless that's your autograph on there. And if you do have something like that accidentally happens, well, you can just say that that's what that is your autograph. Did that intentionally. Should have all my bases covered. No, we'll find out. Close one right there. And you got in there with pink. That looks good. Okay. So, that green in there. Dab that. And then I'm going to start right in the center of that one. Work my way up. And around. Stamp that paint in there. Now this crack, I wouldn't want to go from here right straight into there. You start back here and then work your way up to it. That way you don't set a bunch of paint down in that crack and it seeps out through the edges there. Not a look you probably want. So again, I'm careful not to have a lot on there. That way as I come across, I don't have any dribbling happening down through here. If you did have any dribbling that happened, you know, you could try and quickly wipe it off, let it dry and scrape it off. That usually works pretty well. You might have to come back in and add a little bit of paint over the top of it. Another thing you can do is just dribble more paint on there. Perhaps it's something that was kind of intended and you kind of had to accidentally do it on purpose. I got a little bit of my H there that I want to watch for as I come around to that little berry end there. So I think just a little bit of green on these will look quite well. I am going back over some of this just to make sure I've got out towards my edges and a fairly even coverage. You want to make sure that you got everything that is supposed to be painted that color, but not everything else. So I've got my green on through there for this, and I think that is going to call that pretty well done for all of the paint. Now, the one thing I don't have to worry about is waiting for all of this paint to dry before peeling my stencil up. I can even leave these little pieces of tape on my stencil. And I'm going to take off these outside edge ones. It does help if you take that off first. Again, making sure not to touch any paint because you don't want to set it down someplace that you don't want it. And so I've got this wet spot right here of some paint. I can take and try and clean some of that up with something that I've got so I don't have to worry about it. But I'm just going to be cautious. Same as I've done with everything else, I'm going to take from my corner, peel towards myself, and I'm going to come in and find this little edge. Come on now. Okay, so as I peel up, one thing you want to watch for is if you peel with the grain, that it's possible at times for it to grab maybe a little splinter of wood and pull that piece up with it. It can look really cool at times, and you can say that it's one of those things that you did intentionally. If you don't want that, go against the grain. Now, the stencil material is designed to tear easily. So if you need to, you can take your knife, you can make a small little spot there, and you can tear it and then pull. So I pull just straight up to get my stencils up. And you see how that just tears so easily like that. And you want to be really cautious of having lots of excess. Don't think you've got to pull it all up in one piece. If need to, make it more manageable. And I'm just going to peel this around like so. Oh, lost the edge on that. There we go. Oh, that pink turned out really nice. The reveal on this is sometimes just so fun. Not just sometimes, all the time it's fun. And I'm just pulling this up. Now for me, I don't really care unless something really drastic happens. And if it does happen, if I get a spot that tears up, then that'll give me something to show you on how to fix. So I'm going to try not to be perfect on these, guys. I'm trying to be cut loose, carefree, just letting it be what it is. And with the hopes that if you want it to be better, or if you want to know how you may fix something like that, then maybe it'll happen during one of these episodes, and I can show you how to fix it. And then if I have it happen enough, maybe we'll put together a full show that shows all the different things. Now I am using my knife to pull some of this up. As you notice, I'm not going at it at an extreme angle. I'm not coming in like that. I'm coming in at just the edge so I can get right underneath there and then peel that up like so. So that looks really cool. I like the way that this turned out. Thanks for mentioning making it purple up through there. That looks really, really good. You all did great. Okay, so go around and pluck these up. Now you do want to watch as you get to the insides of some of these that you don't have wet paint sitting around through here waiting for you to pick it up on a knuckle and then set it down someplace else. If you've got your sandpaper, you can kind of sand away. If you went across the edges, you didn't tape it off, that's a way that you can fix that. And I'm going to just finish peeling all of these up and we'll have a finished piece. I'll look around, see if there's anything that I missed or need to fix. And as I said before, you can cut these down to little bits if you need to get to a little corner there, so you can maybe touch in through there. If you have a set of brushes at home, you can touch that in and touch that up with a small brush. But if you hold it back a couple feet away from you and you don't notice the issue, well, then it's not that big enough of an issue to worry about. So we've got our finished up. Home is where the heart is. Pull that out right there. Okay. So thank you for sticking around and watching this, and hopefully your sign that you're working on comes out nice and you are able to use the gradation in through there, and anything that happened to mine, hopefully it helped you out in yours. So subscribe to my channel and follow me for other adventures in crafting and creating and zipping. So cheers.